to another edition of Turned Out a Punk. I'm your host, Damian Abraham. Once again, I'm bringing you a conversation with someone who grew up listening to punk, may or may not still be involved with punk, but had their life changed by the genre in a major way. And today on the show, a good buddy of mine, someone who should have been on the show a long time ago, and it finally came together now, which is amazing because he's got a brand new record under the moniker Split Single. The record is called Amplificado, and it is fantastic. I am talking about my buddy, my pal, Jason Narducy. Now, you might know him from Mould. You might know him from playing with Superchunk. You may know him from playing solo under his own name, but he is an incredible songwriter, and we have some fun. You'll hear this in 1 second. But first, if you'd like to get in touch with me, head over to the email address turnedoutapunkpodcast@gmail.com. That is run by my brother and show producer and guest booker extraordinaire, except, well, I probably should have used his help on this one, and it probably would have happened way sooner, but he did not help me book this one. But thank you, Tristan, for all the hard work you do for this show. I really appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Left4Damian. If you want to support the show, the best way to support the show is just by telling all your friends about it, letting everyone know that you enjoy this podcast that we do here, and spread the word that way. You can also subscribe to it and rate it on iTunes, and thank you to everyone that does do that. I really do appreciate it. And you can subscribe to it on other platforms, whatever platform you're listening to it on. You can also head over to patreon.com/turnedoutapunk and support the show that way. Check out some of the stuff we put up on there, footnotes and upcoming episodes, lost episodes, etc., etc. And thank you to everyone that does do that. I really do appreciate it. They help me cover the costs of doing this thing, and there are costs associated with doing this podcast. Who would have thunk it? And also upcoming projects. There's a lot of cool upcoming projects that are related to Turned Out a Punk, which I'm going to be talking about real soon on here. But we'll get to that in upcoming weeks. But speaking of support, this thing would not be possible with the kind, loving support of the fine folks at Vans, who said to me, you know what, we enjoy that you do this podcast about punk. We do not enjoy the fact that you have to do it out of your own pocket, so they help me cover the costs of doing this thing. And it is very much appreciated, and I cannot wait until the House of Vans comes back. The House of Vans are these parties. I used to go there, and I get to do live Turn It a Punk episodes. It feels like a lifetime ago. It really wasn't that long ago, a couple years now. But when they come back, oh my gosh, I will be back. Speaking of being back, Fucked Up looks to be back on the road come the middle of September. We'll be going out with the band, the Legends, Faith No More, for a few shows. You can find those dates online. I think fuckedup.cc, we have them listed. If you Google Faith No More Fucked Up Tour, that'll come up. There might be some other stuff that comes up, but that'll definitely come up. And you can also find Fucked Up going on tour in January, doing the 10th anniversary of David Comes to Life, the album. It's going to be reissued by Matador Records. You can find it there. And we will be coming maybe to your town, maybe not. But hopefully, and if we do, hopefully I'll see you there. Really, a lot of hope. Got to hold on to hope sometimes, though. Got to hold on to that hope. But yeah, please check out dates for those online. Also, Fucked Up put out Year of the Horse, which is our hour-and-a-half-long song as part of our Zodiac cycle. It has been pressed on vinyl by our good buddy Scotty Karate over there at Tank Crimes Records, and should be hitting people's mailboxes that ordered it already anytime now, and hitting other retail anytime now too, like record stores and things like that. So by all means, check over there at Tank Crimes Records for the Year of the Horse. It's going to be a long record. You got a lot of time now, so you can listen to this hour-and-a-half-long song. That's what we're Fucked Up. Always got its finger on the pulse of something. Okay, on to today's show. Today on the show, my pal Jason Narducy is here today. Now, Jason is someone who, as I mentioned off the top, plays in this incredible band, his own band, Split Single band. Also, Mould, and played with Superchunk, and played with tons of other performers over the years as well. But he also started this career way back when he was like 10 years old in the band Verboten. Now, Verboten, as we was talking about in the show, was kind of like a forgotten young kid band from Chicago, from the first wave of punk in Chicago. And really, they got thrust back into the spotlight when Foo Fighters did the Sonic Highways documentary series, and Dave Grohl talked about how a visit to Chicago to see his cousin Tracy and going to see her band, he was taken aback by the guitar player, Jason, and really inspired to play music by seeing him, up there on stage like that. So that really brought them back to the spotlight. Now there's a musical about this band. There's finally been a reissue of the recordings that they did way back in the day. I had no idea it was a demo tape, but it was. But now it's finally out on vinyl and on digital formats. But such an interesting band, because here's this band of super young kids, largely forgotten about, but yet he has this incredibly important place in popular music history. Like, that's why we do this podcast. We always talk about the amazing things that happens in these small rooms when no one's looking in punk rock, and here we are talking about this is emblematic of the thing that always comes up on the show. Anyway, it's very late at night. I'm getting very philosophical, and that's not the strong suit of this show. So I'm going to sit back. Oh, before I do, pick up Split Singles' brand new Amplificato album. It is fantastic. It is a great record. Also, Jason's going to be going on some touring coming up, so you can find dates and stuff over there at splitsinglemusic.com, including some shows with Bob Mould. So check those dates out. Check out Jason's records. You're going to have a good time with this one. So everyone, sit back, relax, and enjoy Jason Narducy on Turned Out a Punk. Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, buddy. Great to see you.
Well, as I told you just now off air, this is one of the interviews I think I should have done first for this podcast, and it's taken me so long to have you on here. Which is
I'm honored to be here.
Well, I'm a flaky fool because
No.
Well, no, I really do think, and I didn't tell you this off air, but I've got this whole theory, and it's fairly simple, this theory as well, but like, you are so key to the development of popular music in a direct way in the bands you play with, but also through influence as well, through your influence on Dave Grohl, which I'm sure we're going to talk about later on. But you, to me, are such a amazing person on a personal level, but also on a musical history level. So thank you for finally coming on the show.
It's very sweet of you, Damian. I appreciate that. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm a huge fan of you. And we should also, in time, talk about the first time that I saw you perform.
Well, we got a lot to talk about. There's a lot to get to today. This is probably hopefully the first of many. Now that it's happened, hopefully you'll come back for a part two sooner rather than later. But before we get there, I got to start this the way they all start off, which is, Jason, how did you get into punk? Do you remember the first time you ever came across the genre?
First time, I don't think there's a moment, but, I'm so fortunate to have grown up in Evanston, Illinois. And, I met some neighbors, Chris Keene and Zach Canner, who were not only really passionate music fans, but also musicians themselves. And this is at a young age. I was 10, Zach was 11, Chris was 12. And we immediately formed a band, Verboten. And I think it was Chris that brought in the punk rock first. He was really passionate about it. And then Zach and I were all in. And then when we got Tracy in the band, she was already into punk rock. And when I say we're fortunate to live in Evanston, we had great record stores where you could get punk rock music, because that was not easy to get everywhere in America in 1982.
Yeah, absolutely.
But first record, I do remember somebody handing us, it might've been Chris, who had the Effigies record. And what hit home for us was that was an Evanston band. And this was an actual vinyl record. Now a lot of bands just make their own vinyl records, but back then the what do I want to call it? Like the boundary of entrance, or like, the ability to make something like that was almost unheard of. It felt like it had to be a company that made that for you. So for us to hold this record that was an actual Evanston band was thrilling for us. Musically, that band didn't end up, translating so much for me. It was more Naked Raygun, Articles of Faith, as far as Chicago bands. But yeah, I mean, we were honestly, I think I'm alone in this. I haven't heard of anybody else, but Circle Jerks really, really changed my life. I mean, that those records, Group Sex is one of my favorite records of all time.
Absolutely.
And I love that it clocks in at like 16 minutes. Their full length album is shorter than a lot of EPs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I mean, Sugar Beaster is like what, 30 minutes?
Well, that's the thing. It's like, it's just perfect. It's succinct to the point, and it still resonates. That record is.
It sounds like it was made yesterday. I mean, I love their whole, just everything about that, the songwriting, the playing, the energy. I mean, Keith is just a legend to me. And yeah, Group Sex is probably the most important punk rock record to me. I take that back. I can't believe I said this. My dad took me to see Rock and Roll High School in 1979. What? And I immediately bought Road to Ruin. So, I mean, Road to Ruin was my first punk rock record. And that was before Verboten. That was before I met the Verboten guys. So I just want to have something to do was like my song for a couple of years before I even met the Verboten guys.
So what does that make you, 8 getting into punk?
Yeah. I mean, how cool that my dad took me to see that movie. That's like
awesome.
It's such a weird, campy, and you know what, like for me, what's so full circle about that movie, my favorite band, I mean, one of my favorite bands is Cheap Trick, and that they were asked to be the band in that movie and they didn't do it. So the next choice was the Ramones. I mean, what a totally completely different movie that would have been, right?
So different.
Different.
It would have made a little more sense to see the sex like symbol stuff kind of played up.
Yeah, the PJ Souls like just fawning over these, but I like that, to see PJ Souls fawning over Joey Ramone just kind of like made me even more intrigued, like
yeah. It makes so much more sense when you think of it like that, but like, yeah, it adds this whole surreal quality to the whole movie that like,
oh yeah,
like
because Rick Nielsen is so cartoonish.
Yeah,
but I don't know, Robin Zander is so incredibly handsome that I don't know, I like the way it turned out. But
oh, absolutely, no, it definitely would have been a completely different movie. It probably would have been a mainstream success with Cheap Trick, whereas with Ramone,
yeah, and it turns out Cheap Trick didn't need it. They had their live record. So
yeah, so where did you kind of like go from kind of with Verboten? Like obviously you're super young, like unbelievably young. Like how did you guys first start playing shows? Do you remember?
Well, a lot of it was like school gymnasiums, battle of the bands. I remember going up north to the the north shore of Chicago to New Trier High School had a battle of the bands that we played in, and it was all like Rush cover bands. I mean, that was of the time. It was like in 1982 and 1983, if you're a high school kid, you're playing Rush, and here we are. I think Tracy was in high school and that was it. The rest of us were still in middle school, and we were playing original, definitely rock, some punk rock, and we were horrified. We thought that we were going to get our ass kicked. I mean, we thought like it was not our scene at all. But fortunately, I remember Chris's older brother brought a bunch of kids, and we had enough Evanston kids that showed up that just kind of made it about us, and just it was infectious to the rest of the crowd. They're like, oh, these other kids are freaking out, I guess we'll freak out too. But then it wasn't. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, but as far as shows, it wasn't until Tracy was she still is, she's incredibly charismatic. She's the type of person that you meet and you just want to follow her anywhere. And it just so happened, it's funny that you brought up Jello before we started recording. She knew the Dead Kennedys. She knew Naked Raygun. She knew Rights of the Accused. She knew all these bands. Remind me to tell you a Dead Kennedy story if we talk about the Verboten musical, because that's a whole other thing. But so Tracy would befriend these people and get us these shows. So we played at Cubby Bear with Naked Raygun and Rights of the Accused in January of 1983. Thankfully, my dad brought his massive camcorder and put it on his shoulder and recorded this, because I don't know if anybody would believe me that I played at Cubby Bear when I was 11 years old. But
it's so weird because, like, I've got an 11-year-old now, and I can kind of think back to when
I
I
do
was,
too.
and it's how otherworldly is it that you're playing shows with like legit adults, like unless it's a concert
Absurd.
in Minecraft, I can't see the kids doing it right now.
In a bar.
In a bar.
In a bar. My dad, my dad drove me to the show. How else would I get there?
Yeah.
And we pull up. I'll never forget this. He had a blue Chevy station wagon. It's all beat up. We put that neighborhood was terrible. Cubby Bear is right across the street from Wrigley Field, and it was not a good neighborhood at the time. We pull up, and it's kind of dark, and we're looking around. We don't know if we should go in or not. And this drug bust goes down right in front of the car, and we just kind of sit in the car and wait for it to end, and then it that ends and goes away. Then we go into the venue. I think I plugged into somebody else's amp. I brought my guitar, and that was it. I think we didn't sound check. We just got out there and played. I mean, another thing about 1982, 1983, there weren't many venues that would allow punk rock.
Yeah.
It was like cover bands or theme nights. So I think this was a Sunday night or something, and they just somehow allowed a punk night. And we were fortunate to get on the bill completely due to Tracy.
It really feels though 81 is like kind of a key year for Chicago punk, right? Like that Busted at Ozcomp comes out. I think the Suffered single comes out. Like and then of course Effigies and everyone's doing records around that point. Like it feels like that was like a really strong scene during those years, at least.
It was, but I was so young that it's funny. It's not until later when I went through puberty that I would meet some of these folks later. Like I was on tour with Bob Mould in 1995. We were playing in Boston at this place called the Avalon. Bob's solo shows used to be massive. He used to play to 1,500 people a night. And I was opening for him, and Vic Bondi was at the show. Vic Bondi from Articles of Faith. And Bob introduced me, and I was like starstruck. I was like, that's Vic Bondi, And it's funny to say it now, because in retrospect, that's just 12 years later.
Yeah.
It's not that much later, but it felt like a lifetime. And Vic pulled me to the side. This is so sweet of him. But he pulled me to the side, and he had heard of Verboten, although never seen the band. But he wanted to tell me, because he knew that I was going to start working with Bob. I was going to produce our record. And he just told me stories about how when Articles of Faith would get in trouble, whether it was like a promoter not paying them, Bob would take them to the Husker van, open up the case, and pay them out of the Husker money. Just a lot of things that people don't know about Bob. And he's like, I've known the guy a long time. He produced a record of ours. I want you to know that you're with a really good person and you can trust him. And sure enough, here we are 26 years later, and he was right.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, to your point, I mean, it's kind of like when Joe and Chris interviewed me for You Weren't There, the movie about Chicago punk rock. They were like, so what shows did you go to? And I was like, I didn't go to shows unless I was playing in it. It was like Chris and Tracy were a little bit older. They went, but Zach and I were pretty much like, that wasn't an option at age 11 or 12 for our parents, probably. And maybe we were a little bit nervous too. But yeah, so as far as like, right. I mean, I actually learned a lot from the movie about the Chicago scene. Mm-hmm. For instance, I'd never heard of End Result. End Result are fucking amazing. Savage Beliefs, great fucking band.
Absolutely.
And that was just stuff that I didn't pick up then. I didn't have their records, and the movie comes out, and you're like, that was really cool what was happening that I didn't know about at the time.
Well, it also feels like with Chicago, until that movie kind of came out, like a lot of this stuff was just in the realm of like super record collectors. Like obviously the Effigies and Articles of Faith are like, and Naked Raygun and like those are kind of like on another tier. But like there's so many other bands just bubbling up. Like, and also you guys must have been like the toast of the town a little bit as like a super young band. Like you can imagine like
I
all the
wouldn't say
punks.
toast. Yeah, I would say toast to the town. I mean, there's footage you can see. You can watch it on YouTube. Of course, some of it is in Sonic Highways, but there's some footage from Cubby Bear that's on YouTube.
Yeah.
You can see the audience excited for us and maybe excited about us, but also sometimes mocking us and sometimes like, what are these children doing in our, and when I say, you know, these are like 15-year-olds saying, what are these children doing? You know, like they're children too, but I don't know. It wasn't, I mean, it was really like Dave shining the spotlight on us that brought all the attention on the band. We were only together a year and a half. Of course, our friends were excited about it. You know, the different schools that we went to in Evanston, we had a cassette tape, and we would hand those out or sell them and play shows, and people were really proud of us and excited because it was unusual for young people to play original music. It was unusual for young people to play original music that their parents didn't understand, and for our age, I think we were actually pretty good.
Wait, holy shit! There's a demo.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
We made a 7-inch when the musical came out last year. We made it. I'll send it to you.
I know the 7-inch that came out, but I had no idea there was an actual demo tape like from back.
The demo tape is those 4 recorded songs, and then on the 7-inch we added a song from Cubby Bear.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you know, it was probably, you mentioned like punk rock influences. Going to see, this is another thing about Evanston. We had this movie theater called the Varsity Theater downtown Evanston, and it was one of those art cinemas, you know, where they would mail out the mailer and you'd put it up on your wall, and as a calendar, and every night there was different movies, right? Sometimes 2 nights in a row, but it would be like you know, Eraserhead and Quadrophenia, Rock and Roll High School, and The Kids Are All Right. And one of the movies that we got to go to that was there was Decline of Western Civilization, and that just put everything on a clear path for me. I mean, the song that's on the 7-inch from Cubby Bear is a song called He's a Panther. And I just lifted that from a song from Decline of Western. It's a germ song where Darby's just like, I mean, he's like out of his mind, but he's just singing about a panther. So I was like, oh, I'm going to write a song called because I'm 11.
That's awesome.
Like, what are your influences? Well, they're very direct at that age, you know, like.
I think it would be fascinating to do like a documentary or like maybe it's a book about kid punk bands.
Yeah.
Just because it's such a phenomenon within punk, right? Like it doesn't feel like there's like obviously dozens and dozens of these things because it's quite rare, but like, you know, like obviously Red Cross in Los Angeles, or
what was the Indiana band?
Is that the I Want to Kill a Bald Eagle? The
skater kids. God, it came out years after Verboten, but I remember people going, "Oh, it's this." It's not Live Skull, but
no, it's Old Skull.
Old Skull. That's
the one that John parodies on one of the Best Show calls.
Right.
Where he calls up as like the adult member of one of the incarnations of the band.
Oh man, niche humor.
Yes, absolutely. When I heard that, I was like, "This guy is my comedian. Like this, this is my Steve Martin.
This is my world.
Like so plugged into what I'm into." But yeah, like and even like more recently, there's been, you know, like obviously super young bands like the Snots or the Snobs. Sorry, we're a band from Texas, but it's like because, you know, even in general, like this comes up a lot on the show. But as a young person going to punk shows, it is this kind of like Neverland, for better or for worse, where adults and children are interacting with each other in like a very unsupervised kind of way, like or less supervised kind of way. And that can have, you know, we've talked about the positives and there's also negatives. Like when Steve McDonald was on the show, he talked about being kidnapped by his 22-year-old quote unquote girlfriend at the time.
Holy shit. Wow.
Yeah, it's a wild story, but like it definitely feels like it is a world where you're being exposed to stuff that you would not normally see as young as seeing it.
No, I remember Verboten played a show where you know, a teenager came up to me and I was sick and I had orange juice. So I'm backstage with an orange juice, and this kid came up to me. He's like, "Can I have some of your orange juice?" And I just thought that was so weird, but he wanted to make a screwdriver. He had vodka. I mean, the things you learn later, you know?
Yeah.
I think we were mainly, I mean, listen, Tracy being female probably went through things that I don't know about. And I think that's a completely different world of manipulation
Mm.
that exists to this day, of course. But I think we lucked out. And our parents were involved, like the demos were recorded. Zach's dad, Norm, was in advertising, and he was actually trying to pitch the band to do a Kraft mac and cheese commercial. I'm not kidding.
That would have been amazing.
I know they made the commercial with actor kids, but he wanted us to record to show that we were an actual band, and then we used that recording to send it into an NBC Saturday morning show here in Chicago that we ended up going on, called Kidding Around. I can't remember if that's on Sonic Highways too, but that's on YouTube as well. But just one of those like morning kids shows, and here we come on pretty loud. And I remember they cut away from us and they go to like this girl making cookies, like. But you're right. No, I mean, that can be, and especially like in the late 70s and early 80s, I mean, there was so little awareness, and it's a different era for parenting, like,
yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. I think we dodged some bullets there, but I think it would be interesting. I mean, there's a certain innocence and rawness to the music that you make when you're that young. But my favorite part of Verboten is the fact that I'm very close friends with all three of them still. I mean, we talk all the time. We text all the time.
It's amazing how lasting these things that come to you so young in punk are. Like all the people that I was in bands with, all these things are just so defining.
Yeah.
Like you talk about the fact that it's just a year and a half of your life, but like those times in those bands, like obviously you're going through it way younger than I am, but like are just so key, and it's just so formative, like those relationships.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the case for you, but for me, I liken it to when you hear retired athletes talk about, they get interviewed and they're like, "Oh, you must really miss, hitting the game-winning shot or the touchdown or whatever," and they're like, I miss the team."
Yeah.
And the camaraderie is the thing. Coming out of COVID, I had one of my first show in a club after the lockdown was May 1st at a place called Thalia Hall here in Chicago. And it was just me solo. And because of the restrictions, it was 20 people in the audience. These 20 people rented the room and they rented me.
Yeah.
And I was happy to have the work. I'm not going to complain about playing for 20 people in a 1,200 capacity room, but Damian, I got to the venue and I got on the stage and I opened up my case and I started setting up, and the two sound guys came near me and the lighting guy came near me, and we started talking about the show. I got goosebumps because I forgot about the camaraderie of playing a show that happened. You think of like, what are we missing? We miss so much. We miss our bandmates. We miss the volume. We miss hitting that chord and the crowd cheering. But there's the other things actually gave me goosebumps, like walking down to the dressing room and seeing it said stage, with the arrow. That gave me goosebumps. It was all the things that I missed. And I think, with Verboten, I'm just so fortunate that those three people that I went through this very unusual thing with were all still, because people grow apart, and that's okay too. But we've stayed close, and I feel very fortunate that they're in my life.
Yeah, it shows that you guys were all on the right path way back then, because you're all still kind of on it. I've got friends that I don't talk to that was in bands with like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I have friends that I don't talk to that I like, but you just don't talk to them. It's not out of like,
apart,
yeah.
And it's also, I know what you're saying. Like, it's amazing how, I know, I find like I take it for granted for sometimes, like even the stuff I don't like about being in a band now I miss. Like being away from it, I realize like
waiting for the hotel room to be ready.
Oh, like just sitting in a van for hours, staring at a window, having literally nothing to do, and feeling like at peace with that, because that's, or like, being angry about it. I've taken up meditating, and now I'm like,
really?
I meditate the entire time I'm in the van.
There you go. That's the way to use that time.
I'm ready.
What got you into that?
I think external dread. I think just being terrified about what was happening
Yeah. Do you
and
have
just
anxiety?
yeah, definitely terrible anxiety.
And it helps with that?
Yeah, it's really helped me with that, and it's something where I didn't believe in it at all. Like
Yeah.
I found like with many things in my life that I resisted so hard throughout my adult life on some self-destructive thing. I'm now coming to and being like, oh, maybe that's, like be it cannabis a couple years ago or more recently meditating or
Yeah.
eating better through, eating less meat, eating no meat, eating no
Yeah.
dairy and stuff, like all this stuff that I was just like, I'll never do that. I'll never do that. Now I'm like, oh wait, there's a reason people do this stuff. And it's because
Right.
they've
Yeah.
thought about it and come to these realizations. So,
Yeah.
but I like, it's just part of, I guess, growing up in a band, right? Like as you get older in this thing and you kind of get wiser at what you're doing, and and you kind of get it figured out. But unfortunately that's you're like, oh, if only I had figured it out 10 years earlier, that would have made this whole thing a lot easier.
It's interesting you say that. Yeah. I mean, so much of it is like also working out things with your bandmates,
Yeah.
like what's comfortable. I mean, I think with the Bob Mould band, one of the reasons that we do so well, the three of us, is that we recognize how different we are.
Yeah.
We're three very different people, even though, the Venn diagram is insane musically. Like, I mean, the language is crazy. It's crazy how quickly we record records without even rehearsing. Um, but on a personal level, like who needs space, who does not want this before the show, who needs this, and I think we're still learning a little bit about that, but we're so communicative that it helps a lot, But I mean, I brought up anxiety because I honestly think there's bands I was in earlier where bandmates had anxiety, but I've been doing this long enough that there really wasn't a title for it. There wasn't an understanding of it.
Mm-hmm.
I used to chalk it up to, oh, well, this person really hates to hurry up and wait, which is the normal pace of touring, which I was comfortable with. But some people were just so amped up, and I was like, wow, why are they so upset? And I look back, I was like, that's anxiety, and I maybe could have been more patient, and helpful if I had known what was happening with them. But
yeah, no, I think it takes a special. I've noticed through doing this podcast, just talking to people for so long now over the years, that generally there seems to be a certain type of personality type that feels the compulsion to get up on stage, and tends to be the person that also will define themselves as a lead vocalist or lead singer. And it tends to be a certain anxiety that draws people to this thing, and it's just the same sort of anxiety that ends up eating them alive on the road. And I would say them, I mean myself too. But I've just it's interesting, like talking to people, like just seeing my own anxieties reflected, being like, oh shit, yeah, that's how I feel when I get up on that stage. And that's, I think that's part of the reason the performance is the way it is, is because it is, I describe playing shows for me now with cannabis and meditation stuff. I think it's a little bit better, but like as just having an on-stage nervous
don't make
breakdown.
it too comfortable.
No, but it's an on-stage nervous breakdown.
I like the chaos you bring.
Well, the time that I got to do Divide and Conquer with you guys, you saw me backstage where I was like agonizing over memorizing every single word, and I just could not I couldn't concentrate on the show. And also to go back to you guys as a band, there is no greater three-piece lineup of a band out there. I honestly,
you're very sweet.
No, I figure all three of you guys are just masters of what you do, and to see you guys play together as a unit is just, it's like it's definitely the power trio to end all power trios for me.
Oh, you're very kind, Damian.
Who's Rush? That's what I say. Who's Rush? And I used to smoke weed with Geddy Lee's kid back in high school. So
is that right?
Junior high. So that's what I was doing while you were making music and influencing people that would ultimately shape the future of rock and roll. I was smoking weed
with Mr. Weinrev.
Yeah, with this kid who had a Cat in the Hat style raver hat on too.
Really?
Yeah.
I only
did it once. I act like I did it all the time.
Okay. I want to talk about the first time I saw you perform.
What
Do you remember? Did we talk about this?
Well, yeah, yeah. Let's talk about it now. But obviously, we jump around like crazy on this show. So believe me, we're gonna jump around.
Well, Bob told me about you guys. We were both on the same Coachella lineup in 2009, and Bob's like, "I'm going to go over and see this band fucked up." Now, my wife was with us because it was our 10th wedding anniversary, and what only she and I knew is that she was pregnant. Maybe 2 or 3 months, so not super pregnant, but pregnant. Like we knew it, and no, we weren't telling people yet. And we get over to the tent where you guys are playing, and it's packed. And the energy, just something happened. I don't remember what it was. You guys weren't on stage yet, but something about what the crowd knew about you guys already made me lean over to my wife, and I said, let's take 2 steps back. And I was right, because you guys came out, and I don't think it was 30 seconds before you went all WWE with the razor, and you were bleeding everywhere. But the game changer for me, I mean, I love the music, I love the energy, but the game changer for me was when you went into the crowd and the song ended, and you had the mic after just, you go, hey guys, I just want you to know that I've been tested. And I mean, you were just so like deadpan and hilarious, but also like loving to the crowd. It was just this new energy that I wasn't used to. And then you climbed the fucking light rig, and I have pictures of that. I'm going to post those pictures.
I'd love to see those
with pictures. With this podcast. But of course, it's a 2009 digital camera, so it'll be all like pixelated and shit. But that was really, I mean, it was a great year. It was like X and No Age and you guys.
My Bloody Valentine headline.
My Bloody Valentine. Yeah, My Bloody Valentine. So we had played with them before, so I knew what was happening, but my wife had never seen them, and she loves Loveless. So we went over there, and of course they open up. They open with that. What is that? Only Shallow.
Yeah.
And she's like, I can't believe this. And I go, you know what? Only half the PA is on.
Yeah.
She's like, what are you talking about? And somehow it was just perfect. It was the beginning of the second verse. The second half of the PA came on, and it was like, and she was like, oh my, it was euphoric. It was euphoric. It was so much fun. But no, once I saw you perform, I was like, this band, I'm in love. I love this band.
Thank you. That day was so surreal. I remember actually afterwards meeting Bob for the first time, and I couldn't see him. I had blood and sunscreen in my eyes, and I'm like, and he's like, can I get a photo with you? And I'm like, sure. What's your name? And he's like, Bob Mould. And I'm like, what the fuck? like
what's
trying to
name?
clear out my eyes. Yeah. Oh my God, Bob Mould, what the fuck?
Oh man.
It was David Hasselhoff was there backstage. Wasted.
What?
Yeah, I remember.
Really?
I'm sitting in Turbo Negro's dressing room, and they're like, look, there's David Hasselhoff. And we look out, and he's just like wasted, like chilling
with
outside.
The burger.
He wasn't even with the burger. I made the burger motion.
You did that, yeah.
I know, but he was actually making out with someone, which makes it even more. It looked like he was eating a hamburger in the process, but it was,
yeah.
It was a that was a really fun, weird, surreal like weekend.
You guys absolutely killed. I mean, it was really just like for me, seeing a band that I was not familiar with at all just absolutely kill. I mean, it was so much fun, and it's like this is my music, you know. This is it felt amazing.
What was your?
Do you remember?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go on.
I was gonna say, do you remember when we played Primavera and took the van ride back?
Yeah, no one was happy with Bob and I that morning.
Do you remember what I said? Do you remember what I said at the end?
No, what did you say?
So you're sitting right behind Bob. I'm in the front with Bob, and he's just leaning back talking to you for 45 fucking minutes. You guys, I mean, it was like 2 14-year-olds, not even a breath was taken. It's just wrestling for 45 minutes. Your bandmates are asleep in the back.
Oh yeah.
And then we pull up to the airport, and you guys like that. And I just turn around to your band and go, what do you guys want to talk about? And they all fell out. It was so much fun. They're like, ah.
They definitely tune me out. They can. I think I'm probably at this point like a white noise machine to them, literally, where I just like just put them
a recording of your podcast is what they go to sleep to.
Oh yeah, I can guarantee you one thing they don't listen to: my podcast.
Because they get a podcast every day.
Yeah, they also get the cliff notes on tour. Like I try and bring them all up to speed on every episode that I've recorded and what I've learned. You know. I really do feel like I'm in college though. Like every episode I learn more and more, and I put like pieces together, and so I feel it's my duty to share that with people, whether they want to hear it or not. Like I'm like a religious person spreading the good word.
Yeah.
You know?
You're very sweet to do that.
Well, what was your first concert you ever went to?
Cheap Trick.
Cheap Trick. Wow.
I was 10 years old. My parents divorced when I was 4, and my dad, you know, again, like the 70s parenting thing, I think there was pluses and minuses to this, but he would basically take me along to parties, which sounds incredibly inappropriate, except that he never drank. So he was sober the whole time. It was mildly inappropriate. I mean, I was around a lot of like partying with adults, which was just kind of like, you know, any kids here? No? Dad, do you know how to get a babysitter? You know, like, but that said, anyways, he might not have been able to afford one. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money, but we're at this party, and this guy says to my dad, "So you're going to Cheap Trick on Friday?" And I look over at my dad, and he goes like this to the guy, and just kind of nods, you know. Oh yeah. So you're not going? My dad's like, "No, I'm not going to Cheap Trick." We were walking out of the party. I was like, "Dad, are we going to Cheap Trick on Friday?" And he was adamant, "No, we are not going to Cheap Trick." We went to Cheap Trick. It was my first show. The opening band was a band called Off Broadway, which was a rock band from Chicago that had a minor hit called "Stay in Time," which I still think is a great rock song. Check it out, "Stay in Time."
Were they kind of like the same sort of power pop kind of?
Very much.
Oh, awesome.
Oh yeah, you can tell that they might have even ripped each other off. Like,
oh wow,
there's a song by Off Broadway called "Full Moon Turned My Head Around" that opens exactly like hello there, ladies and gentlemen, hello there, awesome. by Cheap Trick. Yeah, like same voicing and everything, but it was a great double bill, and Off Broadway were great. But man, Cheap Trick came out. It was at the Granada Theater, which doesn't exist anymore. It's right where Loyola University is in Chicago on Sheridan Road. It's probably like a 1,600 capacity theater, and this is on the All Shook Up tour. I'm 10 years old. We're probably in like 15th row. Not bad. He got decent tickets.
Yeah.
And they just, I mean, you see footage of the band at the time, and it's like, you know, Rick comes out with the 5-neck guitar, and they do Day Tripper, and he comes out with a Beatles guitar, and then he comes out with a Rick Nielsen guitar, like it's actually shaped like him. I mean, you're just watching this freak show with great songs and Robin Zander singing like a god. And then they encored with Highway to Hell.
Oh, whoa.
By your band. Your first show.
my first show by AC/DC.
Yeah. They were on fire, and like everything changed. I know that's cliche. It's totally corny to say, but like everything in my life changed after that.
Was he doing like a Bon Scott vocal? Do you remember? Like, I know this is so long ago.
Robin Zander to this day can sing it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing. He's like 64. Drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, and he just sings like you can't believe. He could do anything at that point.
That's awesome.
It was an amazing show. So that was my first one.
They're kind of like the anti-Kiss when you kind of think about it. You know, like if like Kiss is chaotic evil, they're like chaotic good. You know, like but like just sort of the same sort of approach to it, where it's like so much larger than life what they're doing. So it was like a young person.
They actually toured together. They toured together in 76, which is really early for Cheap Trick. It might have been their first record. Bob Mould saw them in saw that tour. Right? It might have been, well, yeah. Was that closest to his hometown that I'm spacing on right
Yeah,
now?
like he's from upstate New York and Syracuse, right? Or
No,
no,
it's not Syracuse.
Albany, or no, what I can't believe I'm
It's a small town. I've
yeah.
actually been there with him, and I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, his friends would drive up. He went and saw like Aerosmith, and but he's
Rush.
Bob.
He saw
Did
Teenage
he?
Head and Rush up there. Yeah,
Did he see?
he said he talked. It was his French class at school that
Yeah.
they talked into going up there.
Wow. Yeah, he saw Kiss and Cheap Trick. Of course, he thought Cheap Trick were better.
Yeah.
You know, but Cheap Trick had. I mean, Rick was kind of cartoonish, like Kiss was cartoonish. But you're right. Like Kiss was more like God of Thunder, and Cheap Trick were more, Dream Police. But at the time, I loved both. I've grown to really. Kiss does not stand the test of time. You know what does stand the test of time is their books. The Peter Criss autobiography is endlessly, unintentionally humorous.
It's a classic. So, the audiobook version of that was, I think, a classic.
There's an audiobook? I'm read
pretty sure that was the one, or maybe I'm thinking of, once again, a Worcester parody of it.
Oh, could be as
well. But I'm pretty sure we listened to it on tour one time.
Oh my God. And the Ace Frehley one, they're just they lack so much self-awareness. And anyways, yeah, Cheap Trick, those are my guys. I mean, it's funny. On the first Bob Mould tour I did, the drummer was Brendan Canty from Fugazi, and Brendan and I would go on these long walks and talk about music. And he had this thing that we would not argue about, but we'd have really long discussions about it. It still comes up occasionally these days, but he's like, what's the best American rock band? And I just never thought about that. And, he goes with a wider scope. He goes with like the Dead and Aerosmith and the Beach Boys. But for me, I'm like, Cheap Trick and REM, and it's not really even close for me. Those are the two bands, but it's about time. It's about when you hear the music and what age you are, and when you fall in love, and when you fall in love with music and all that, those kind of things. But it's an interesting thought. I'm not a big, like list guy that's big on social media, like top 10, whatever. And I never join in on that. But to simplify my music taste, Cheap Trick and REM are where it's at.
And Psycho Sin from New Jersey.
And Psycho Sin. How did I forget Psycho Sin?
People always leave them off the list, and it's always so sad.
It's a great reminder. Thank you, Damian.
Truly an American treasure, and things like that. It's funny. Like, I'd be interesting, and I guess talking to Brendan about that, it gets to the point. Like, I've always heard, and I haven't always heard. I'm kind of formulating this new theory about DC and their enjoyment of things that are weirder. Like, I always heard that the Misfits never went over well in DC.
Interesting.
And it's because it was always like
they're pop. Yeah.
When it's also spooky and weird.
Oh,
and they're putting affectations on it. So I wonder if, like, because, they always talk about the Nuge and loving Ted Nugent, but they never hear about them loving Kiss. Like when you talk to the Melvins people, or you talk to, yourself, like talk to people, they talk about loving Kiss back then. You never hear those DC people love it. So I wonder if the Kiss was also on that kind of like, it's too zany. Get this out of here. We want the Nuge, where it's just keeping it real rock.
God.
Back then, when it was still acceptable to like them.
Yeah. So much of that stuff has not aged well. It's crazy.
No,
but
sadly.
I was a member of the Kiss Army. I mean, when I was 7 years old, and I was like, I saw, what was it? Phantom at the Park, or whatever it was called. The
amazing movie.
But I was 7, and I was like, hey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they had comic books, like
right.
It's perfectly marketed to
Gene Simmons. Yeah. I mean, as much as he's like the Trump of rock music, at the time he was a brilliant marketing mind. It was like, he got it, horror movies, comic books, rock and roll.
And that's the play. You don't play for the cool people, which is the thing that all bands try and do. You play for the little kids. So then you're like Limp Bizkit, and all of a sudden people are talking about you're good all these years later, or your Kiss, and people,
because they aged into it. Yeah,
exactly. You hit them young enough, and then it's just their nostalgia, so they think it's their Beatles when they get older.
It's the happy meal. It's the McDonald's Happy Meal.
Yeah. Don't be cool. Be for the kids. That's how you get this longevity thing out of this. What were some of the bands that you remember playing with back then? Like, who are some of the bands that, like, obviously you're 10 years old, but like, what are some of the bands that you played with that stuck out to you? And in Verboten, I mean, really, that one Cubby Bear show was the only time that we kind of rose to that level of
bands that were recognizable. It was always we were always paired with bands that, were completely different, because there just weren't that many original punk rock bands that we knew.
Yeah.
Before Verboten, my dad was teaching film classes at Northwestern University. And again, this is one of those, like, he took me to a party thing, but he took me to a party of these students of his, grad students, film grad students, that had a band called the Cleaning Ladies. It was spelled Laddys.
Okay.
And we're there, and they had a guitar. I just picked up the guitar. I started playing, and the lead singer of the band is like, "What?" He saw me playing. So he wrote a song for us called "Give Up on My Girl," where it's me and the singer John Anderson arguing over the same woman, which is a really funny premise.
And we
shot a video for it. That's on YouTube too. But
I gotta see that. I've never seen that on YouTube. I've seen most of the bones. So
I did a lot of shows with the Cleaning Ladies. My dad would drive me to the bar, and I'd join in for like a Who song with them, and we do "Give Up on My Girl," and maybe not a lot, maybe like 2 or 3. But
did they record it all, the Cleaning Ladies?
They won like the MTV. What was it, like I don't know what it was called, but it was like when anybody could send in a tape, like the Basement Tapes or something.
Yeah.
They won that. And then John Anderson, the lead singer, went on to work he made the Smile DVD for not the Beach Boys, but just for Wilson, for
when you did that Smiley Smile tour or whatever, or oh, that's so weird.
Yeah. So he went on to like do all these kind of amazing video things, but I think he won a Grammy for that.
Wait, was there a song called "You Won't French Kiss"? She Won't French Kiss.
Yes, yeah.
I've got that 7-inch.
No way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why you said it. I'm like, oh my god, I think this sounds so familiar. But like,
it's a good video too. They made great videos.
Oh, that's so awesome! Wow,
yeah.
I gotta really listen to that single. That's so funny.
Yeah,
and stuff. So when you started getting older, like obviously it's probably like a good 4 or 5 years before you're able to start going to shows by yourself, right?
Yeah. And I kind of stepped away from music for a little bit. It wasn't until maybe like junior year of high school that I started to really pick up the guitar again. I think, I got interested in basketball, and I don't know. I think just I didn't have that support. Like, one of the great things about my Verboten bandmates were they were so supportive. They were just really encouraging of me to create and bring things to the band. And then once that was gone, I was like, felt a little rudderless. And so I attached myself to, just like growing up and being a kid and also playing basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So then in high school, I started playing in bands again. That's not true. Yeah. Sophomore year, I was playing out again. But again, like church gymnasiums or something. It was not like I did play Batteries Not Included in high school, which was a bad Chicago club. But it wasn't until college when I went to Baltimore that I started gigging heavily acoustically. Baltimore is known for their row houses.
Mm-hmm.
In 89, 90, 91, it was row bars. So there weren't that many places to even have a band because the bar was so tiny. So I played with another acoustic guitarist and a bassist, and we would just play, again, REM, Smiths, Bob Mould, and a lot of like the kind of alternative rock of the time that was being played on WHFS.
What was the scene kind of like at that point when you got to, like, maybe going back to high school, like in Chicago? Like, were you going to shows at that point, other like not necessarily playing them, but even just seeing other bands play?
Not really cool shows. I mean, I love the Who. I would go see the Who. I'd go see Cheap Trick, go see U2. I wasn't really going to smaller. Oh, I did see the Beastie Boys when I was 16 at the Aragon, the first tour. And I did. My stepdad was doing a conference in Europe in '87 when I was 16, and I got to see Sonic Youth on the sister tour.
Oh, that's the best record.
That was Red Fabrique in Switzerland. You want to talk about a show that just you're just like, what is happening? They were so far beyond anything I had experienced before, and they were so good that it shook you. You know, it was like for days I was just like, I just experienced something that I've never experienced before.
Yeah. Was there an opener on that tour? Do you know?
Yeah, but I don't remember the name of the band. But they brought this contraption that was at the front of the stage where they hung sheets of metal that they were banging on. It was like a sheet metal. It was very percussive.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the band, but I'll never forget that experience.
Yeah, I wonder who that would. They would probably had someone really cool or interesting on that tour too. I wonder. I'm going to look into that. Who that would have been?
Yeah. I wonder who it is. Yeah,
that's awesome. I'll let you know. I'm going to research it. I'm going to try and see if anyone's got any flyers.
Yeah, it would be cool. Yeah, it'd be cool to track down some music and be like, oh my god, that was.
Well, it's such a pivotal kind of like point again in music, like that kind of 87 pre-Nirvana, like before everything gets formulated and kind of codified, and this is like this kind of music where I guess it's just broadly college rock or pig fuck music in the case of Sonic Youth, I guess sometimes called.
All right.
Have you heard of that genre, pig fuck music?
No.
That was I guess a poorly named genre that was a
Agreed.
New York music critics tried to slap onto like Sonic Youth, Pussy Galore, The Swans. Didn't really catch on.
No, it's terrible.
No, I don't think anyone wants to be called pig fuck music.
Or say it.
No, I think like of all the genres that people don't want to get called, that they get called like emo, you know, or grunge, you know.
Yeah.
But pig fuck music, really, like you'd want to be called emo after being called pig fuck music.
Well, in emo and grunge, there's something about those words that sound like what they're describing, and pig fuck does not make me think of Sonic Youth at all.
No. Maybe some other bands in the genre. I wonder if early White Zombie classifies as pig fuck music. That could be in there too.
That's a full circle thing. Jay Zombie was the guitarist in Rights of the Accused when we played in 1983. Whoa. Yeah. Jay Younger was in Rights of the Accused, and then he ended up in White Zombie.
Rights of the Accused is a fantastic band. And also Tracy took photos, I think, in their 7-inch too.
She may have, yeah.
I think she got a credit on the old Research Machine Discogs.
Is that right?
For that one as well.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, like they're a band that, once again, like we were talking about, like they're obviously a little bit more well known than some of the obscurities, like they get lost in the sands of time. But
yeah,
you know, like another band that doesn't really get brought up. Like it feels like almost like Chicago hardcore kind of peaks around this 82, 83 period, and then there's kind of like this sort of like dip in, I don't know, popularity. Obviously, you're very young at this point too, and I'm looking at it from far away. But it seems like that's something that's echoed everywhere around 84. There's like a real kind of like drop off, you know, where people like kind of get into different types of music or changing.
Well, and Rights of the Accused continued. They became more of like a thrash metal band. I saw them at Cubby Bear in probably, I mean, I was not old enough to be in there, so I was probably 19. So maybe it was like 1990.
Yeah.
And it was like Wes Kidd was in the band. Wes Kidd went on to form Triple Fast Action, and then he became a manager, a band manager. Brian St. Clair was the drummer. He went on to play in Local H, and now he's the stage for the last 12 to 15 years. He's been the stage manager for Cheap Trick. So there's all these, it's funny, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so many small world things, but Rights of the Accused kept going. And, you know, Mike, I think it's Mike O'Connell, I think is his name.
Mm-hmm.
He just had so much energy. He was bartending at Thurston's, he was bartending at Delilah's, and he's in all these bands, and it was he was a force of nature, and I think they should have gotten recognized. Although it's one of those bands where like I actually couldn't name a song, but I remember the shows. They were a great live band. You know, it was like they knew how to bring it, and but that's also the nature of music. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, they should have been huge, or they should have. That always happens, you know. It's like there's always great music that doesn't get recognized or doesn't connect or whatever. But I'm just thankful it exists, and I'm thrilled when I find it.
Yeah, like what separates the off-Broadways from being Cheap Trick? You know, it's just like circumstance and timing, and you know, like who knows? But that's what that's the thing that's amazing about music, is that you have all these what ifs. You know, like what if Dave Grohl hadn't gone to that show as a young kid and seen you play? Like, things might have happened differently. Like, you know, like who would have wound up drumming in Nirvana? Like who would have, Foo Fighters are like arguably the biggest rock band on the planet right now. Like
Totally. Yeah.
like who could be bigger at this point? So
I know.
like it's amazing how these what ifs kind of play out. And I think that's part of the fun. Like this is Van talk to me. Like I sit up there with Jonah and I'm like, yeah, what if this record, like what if HR had dropped his comp tape in like early like the mid 80s, like he'd planned, like how would have that changed things? Like what would have been different?
Oh man, it is really like such a path of consequence, like of things that you can't even map out in or predict, that just these little twists of fate that just send something in one direction. And yeah, that's a beautiful thing. I also I was talking to somebody last night about how I think it's so cool that, and I'm going to be delicate with the vocabulary, but a band that is maybe not great that makes a great record. I love that possibility exists.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to bring up an example, and I mean this in the most loving way, because I love the band. I don't know if they're great, but I do. For me, Welder has a record called Pull that I think is just like one of the best 90s rock records I've heard. I mean, top to bottom, it is amazing.
I gotta hear this thing.
But Welder,
yeah,
Pull, it's fucking amazing.
Writing that down.
They played a show in Minneapolis, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, and the promoter got a hold of me and asked if I would open up solo, and I was like, I'll start driving right now.
Wow.
I will do anything to be on this bill to hear them play those songs again, because I used to go to Lawn Jacks and see them play, and I was just like, this band is amazing.
Yeah, there's also there's something special about those bands, like that don't find that greater next level success, where like just seeing them makes them all the more powerful. The fact that they still have that kind of,
and I wasn't blown away by their show. I just love that record. You know what I mean? Like I think it's so cool that those three people got into a studio with an engineer and created this thing that will last forever in my collection.
Yeah.
And it's just so great. But I'm not sitting here going, how come they weren't huger?
Yeah.
I kind of get it, but that record is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like those little things, those little humanity. You can't predict these things. You can't, it's not going to be the way you see it every time. It's going to be very unpredictable.
Well, yeah, obviously I respect the genius of this person the whole way through. And but I didn't get PJ Harvey until her second last record. They just
interesting, really.
Yeah, her songs are brilliant. I can see why they're brilliant. But then she did, and I'm blanking on the name. It's like a very long name, but it's the second last record she did. I'll fix that in the intro. Is just unbelievable. To me, it's just
not the one about DC.
No, there's a song in it about DC. It's like Hope Benefit Project. There's songs about different monuments all over.
Yeah.
The world, I think.
Interesting. And that's the only record I don't get by her.
That's what a lot of people have told me. And I saw her live on that record. And I was like, it's the only time I've ever seen an artist.
So when she came out with the marching band?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
The only time I've ever seen an artist where they've been like, okay, here's an old song, and everyone goes, yay. And I'm like, no, more new stuff. Yeah. Just the new record, please. Just the new one.
She could do anything as far as I'm concerned. She's made enough great records that I go to all the time, that I don't even care that I don't get that record, because she's great.
Yeah. See, that's the thing I find amazing about music, and that you can have like you're saying, there's always potential for everyone to make something that all of a sudden just connects with you. After all this time, being and there's certainly, a lot of artists that I love where there's just one record in the catalog where that just in the middle of the catalog sometimes, where it's just oh shit, that's the one. That's the one that hits me.
Yeah.
Where did you meet Bob for the first time?
I was a super fan. I saw him on the Black Sheets of Rain tour for the first time And then not long after that, he started touring acoustic.
Mm.
And there was a guy, it was like a lighting guy that I met on some other show who knew Bill Ramey, who was tour managing for Bob at the old 930 Club. So this is probably like 91. I'm probably like 20. And I got to meet Bob then. And then what I would do this sounds pretty stalkerish, but I would collect the local press that Bob would do, right? Like in a stack. Because before the internet, you do an interview, you never see that article.
Yeah, never see it. Yeah.
So I would collect those and then go to sound check and bring them to him. But try to be really, quiet and respectful. And I think I did that enough that I earned his trust. And so he knew who I was. And then it got to the point where if I showed up at sound check, he and his partner would make sure I was on the guest list. And so it became a very friendly thing, but I never brought up my music on purpose because as a young musician, I started recording more when I was like 20, 21. And one of my friends' dad said, I just happened to go to school with this guy named Al Teller, who runs MCA Records. If you ever want to give him music, he will absolutely listen to it once. Like you got one shot.
One shot.
And what he said, this actually really resonated with me. He said, make sure you're ready. Make sure that's what you want him to hear. And I felt the same. Once he said that to me, I was like, I more important than Al Teller for me is Bob Mould. So I'm not going to do that until I'm ready.
Yeah.
And then in 1994, I made the record with Jason and Allison, Woodshed, which is just me on acoustic guitar and Allison on cello and me singing. But it's sort of like people saw it, they see the cover and they're like, oh, it's a folk record. I'm like, filtered through My Bloody Valentine, it's like wall of sound, acoustic, everything's super compressed. The cellos are distorted, it's like in your face. And the promoter here, one of the promoters here in Chicago, Jam Productions, had 3 Bob solo shows coming up, and they suggested Jason and Allison, and Bob's like, oh, tell me about Jason and Allison. And they start describing me, and Bob's like, I know who Jason is. He's the guy who comes to all the sound checks, So, so then we ended up opening up those 3 shows. After the first sound check, he asked us to do the rest of the tour. So we ended up doing a whole East Coast tour with him. We got home from that tour. He left a message on my machine, which I still have to this day, that says he would like to be considered for producing the next record.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's you bring up a good point there. There's like like obviously we're all familiar with the term Punisher at this point. And there's like a good type of Punisher and a bad kind of Punisher, but you kind of have to be a little bit of the Punisher to get in there with the bands that you like, and I say this as not always a good Punisher. I was sometimes a terrible Punisher, of different artists, but like it kind of takes that, I don't know, like that drive, as a young person, like I was the guy showing up at the shows for sound checks, talking to the band, helping load in, or just being around just to kind of
diligence.
It was like, and it's that type of fan that of course winds up being in bands.
And I think that the most productive way to do that, and I think this is a phrase that I've heard Bob use, which is, I put myself within his sightlines.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I didn't like push anything or ask too early or ask ever maybe. But what I did is I made sure that I was present and within his vision, so that if he was thinking about it, he would think, oh, maybe this, maybe. So,
definitely.
And I think that's an important distinction, because I've had people that are just way too aggressive with that. And it's a little bit like, it's good to be ambitious, I think, but it's also good to prove to people that you're a good hang.
Exactly.
Some people ask me, like, how do you get all these gigs? How do you play bass with all these people? And I stress this. I'm not that amazing of a bass player, but what I try to be is a good band member. I try to be someone who's in the van or on the airplane or whatever, backstage, I'm serving the band, serving the greater thing that we're doing, which is being a touring band that's playing every night and trying to get through all the chaos and the hurdles that happen even when you're a functional band. That's my goal. I know that I've not done that every time, but I like to think that I am in tune with my bandmates and try to be respectful of their space.
I don't think I've ever done that.
You know what? As lead singer, you don't have to. No, that's the thing. I don't think I've ever done that.
That goes back to that special kind of damage it takes to find yourself as a lead singer.
Back to the word Punisher.
Yeah, back to the word Punisher. There's a certain type that you're seeing that begins to form after much conversation.
That's funny.
So, Jason,
the beloved Punisher.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely at times was like, and still at times am at Tim Meadows, I started telling him a story this past weekend, and he was basically like, "Yeah, cool story, bro," and like walked off in the middle of the story.
He didn't know who you were.
No, and then later on after I performed, he came up and was like, "Oh man, that was awesome," and then we cleared it up. Nice. But like, it was definitely, I was like, "Oh shit, I still have the Punisher in me." It's nice to know that I'm still in touch with that.
Do you know that I painted Tim's apartment in Chicago?
Whoa, no.
So through this designer that I was working, so I have a small painting company in Evanston, and Tim has a place in Chicago, and through this designer I got this job, and we just hit it off. Like our conversation was good and like good vibes. And so when I came up with this totally stupid concept for a short video called "The Sexiest Elbows in Rock Music." Yeah. Did I ever send this to you?
No, but I was researching you and I found this and I'm like, I gotta fucking see this video.
So I asked Tim, I was like, is there any way you would portray my manager in this video? And he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And he's great. He's so funny in it. But Tim's awesome. I saw him, maybe less than a year ago. That dude he's got great taste in music. Amazing
taste in music.
He loves Chris Bell. Like he's
Whoa.
Yeah, the dude has like, his collection is insane. That's how the conversation started, because I'm in his house. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't help but notice, like, and he also has like pictures of, I don't think I'm giving away too much here, but he has pictures of like Bob and Ray, like old school comedy records and stuff. He's a real student of comedy and of music, and just like one of the sweetest guys.
Very nice dude.
It's funny because he was texting me. He was supposed to shoot this thing in LA, but COVID thing happened. This was last fall, and so he just took off to Hawaii to just get away. I think it was being paid for, and he sent me a picture, and it was like just a window treatment. And I'm like, wow, Hawaii looks amazing, dude. Because, if he sent like the beach picture, it'd be like rubbing it in,
Yeah.
So it's just like, just a window treatment,
Yeah, like take a picture
I'm
of
in Hawaii.
Yeah. Nothing's here. Nothing's here. It's funny how many of those, like obviously Fred, I think Fred's in Sexiest Elbows and Rock and Roll as well too, right? Like, and so, sorry, what is Sexiest Elbows in Music?
Sexiest Elbows in Rock Music.
Rock music. I need to see this thing, because
there's one main one that did really well, right? So Jimmy Fallon premiered it on the Tonight Show website. It went viral. And then The Onion approached me. They're like, if you want to do more, we'll do them with you. So we shot 2 more that I think are really good. They've got like Frank Black and Sharon Van Etten, Todd Barry, Michael Cerveris, Jeff Tweedy, Michael Shannon. But they just, we released them right after Trump got elected. And I think people were just like, they didn't feel like laughing. And I don't understand that. But there's 3 of them. Yeah, there's 3 Sexiest Elbows on. John Worster, of course, is amazing in the first one. Bob's hilarious in it. We had fun doing those. But that's so funny. You posted that picture of Tim Meadows on your Instagram, and I was like, oh my God, I love it that those 2 guys are hanging out.
Yeah, no, he is, once again, like I said, great taste in music. He's, of course, at the Dinosaur Jr. summer camp. And it made me feel really good because he told a story about interviewing Jay Mascis where Jay gave him nothing. And I'm like, oh, it's a universal experience.
He's better now.
Oh, now. Definitely. Yeah. And like, to be fair to Jay, like if you get him talking about something he wants to talk about, he'll talk,
Yeah.
So better bring up Degrassi. That's
The one thing.
the one thing.
Well,
Hardcore
and
Degrassi.
then you mentioned Imperioli. He came to a bunch of Bob Pollard shows that I was playing on, and then it ended up we were playing the Bowery, and Bob had Michael Imperioli's band open for us.
Yeah, they're pretty good, eh?
They're good. It's like indie rock, like
Yeah.
full on, like you can tell he studies, it's like, I want to say like if Cracker met Pavement or something. I don't know. Like it's straight up indie, it's like, but it's good. But I have to tell you, we're sound checking at the Bowery. This is the Bob Pollard band right after God of My Voices broke up. And Michael Imperioli walks in with one of the other dudes from The Sopranos, one of the big dudes. The guy who lives with the uncle, I forget his name, but he's
man, it's been so long since I watched.
You can picture it, like, really big guy.
Yeah,
they both walk in. Those Bowery. The Bowery has those pin lights, so they're carrying guitars, and then two of them walk in and just stop. And I'm sound checking. I'm like, I'm fucking terrified. And I know one of those guys. No, Michael Imperioli is a really nice guy, really present. Like he doesn't carry a stardom around. He's a fan, and he truly loves music.
A deep music head too, like someone who like is very passionate about this stuff, which is like I find that's the thing that ultimately that's why I do this podcast. I find that's like as soon as you get people that are like that and you can relate to them about music, it's like you can have a conversation with anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like unless they're a real nightmare, then it becomes hard.
Then you don't want to do it.
Then you don't want to do it. No, exactly. You're just like, let's just steer clear of this whole thing. It's also funny how you bring up Worcester, someone you play with in two bands, right? Just the two, right? Superchunk when you're doing Superchunk stuff.
And Bob Pollard.
Bob Pollard. Of course, he does Bob Pollard too.
He's on all the split single records,
and he's also, of course, your own stuff.
Bob Mould, Superchunk. We backed. Did we back Doug Gillard once in New York? I think maybe it was just for a couple songs. I mean, we played in the Pretenders together.
That's amazing.
For one show.
Speaking of punk, OG.
Oh my God, she is, and her guitarist James Walborn. The two of them were just like other level. I learned a lot from that. We were fortunate that we got to do 2 rehearsals because that was kind of like, for us, rock fantasy camp, like hanging out with Chrissy Hind. Okay. And she liked us. We ended up going out to dinner every night together and 2-hour dinners. And
like you say, be a good hang. Was,
oh my God, surreal. Her stories. She has one of the best rock autobiographies I've ever read.
Yeah, for sure.
She was in The Damned.
Yeah.
She was in The Clash. And she has pictures to prove it. Like, it's not like just her talking. Like, no, there she is. Like,
she's in every conversation about that era. Like, she's present for all of it. Yeah,
and she really is that charming, but also kind of like she's dominant, but in a charming way. Like she's in charge for sure all the time, but you kind of want her to be. And then she starts singing, and you're just like, forget it. Like, is there a better voice? I mean, she's magical.
And like you said about Tracy, like she has to be tough, like for what she had to put up with to get to this industry. Like, and that's in the book too. She goes into like some of the horrific details of what she had to put up with in that book.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know. And which she handles with grace.
Yeah.
But, no, it's a good point about Tracy. I mean, I think Tracy, it was coming from all angles. First of all, she was adopted. She was adopted into a conservative family. This is the story I wanted to tell you. So Dave does the Sonic Highways thing, and then we ended up making a musical about Verboten. Not my idea, but this guy approached me, and I thought it was absurd. But he's like, "I'll write the book, and you write the music." Well, we worked on it for 5 years, and it ended up. I can't believe this, but it was like really successful.
Yeah, it's amazing
and exciting.
This thing.
Yeah, so we're halfway through making this thing. And Tracy comes into town, I think because the Foos were playing and she wanted to see her cousin. And we go out to breakfast, and she's like, Jason, I just heard this Verboten story that I never knew from back in the day. I was like, please tell me. So her dad, again, she's adopted into this conservative family. Her dad is in the kitchen reading the paper in 1983, looks at his wife and says, honey, have you heard of this musical act called the Dead Kennedys? And Tracy's mom goes, yeah, I've heard of them, and they've been to this house. And he takes off his glasses and he goes, what? Tracy's mom goes, Tracy brought them to the house. And the second time she brought them to the house, they took a cab up to your country club. They swam in the pool and they had lunch on your account. It's a true story. It's a true story. I mean, Tracy was insane. She was like fearless. She was fearless. And so Tracy tells me that story, and I immediately called, the playwright. I was like, you have to fucking put this in the music. He's like, I know, I can't write something that good. And it's true,
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's a good example of how special she is. And I don't know how we got on that track.
No, we're talking about just what it takes to be tough and to be in this, and I guess fearless too, right?
Yeah.
But, and I guess like what I wanted to get at, like obviously you and Worcester playing in all these projects together. It's amazing how many, brought up Todd Barry, who played drums in an incredible. Was Chieftain's the name of the band? I'm blanking on his band that he played in.
Florida.
Yeah, he played in this band that he played on one of their LPs. They have a few records, but the LP he plays on is awesome. It sounds
really?
To me, it sounds like a Flying Nun record. I might be the only person on earth who thinks that, but like, I think it's phenomenal. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna look it up.
I just saw Todd a week ago. He was doing his crowd work thing here in Evanston.
Well, yeah, like so he's playing drums in a band. Obviously Fred Armisen, Belushi played drums in the Dead Boys for a little bit.
That's right.
That.
Yeah.
There's a comedy drummer thing. Like especially a punk comedy drummer thing.
Have you noticed how good Fred has gotten since he started playing on on the Seth Meyers show?
Yeah, he's practicing all the time now.
Oh my God! I mean, he wasn't a bad drummer before, but like now it's like it's pretty cool to see. Yeah. And I bet he's excited about that. I mean, he is such a huge music fan, and like, I mean, his game is just so good now.
Oh yeah, no, he's definitely talk about a high profile drumming gig. You want to get your chops if you got that thing.
Don't mess up every night on national TV.
You got like Questlove and Max Weinberg. Like you got there's a high bar that's set for you as a late night drummer.
Anton Fig.
Yeah.
Isn't that the Letterman? Wasn't that the Letterman guy?
You know what you
I don't know. Yeah, I could be wrong.
But I do know G. Smith played in a punk band from Saturday Night Live.
Did he?
Yeah.
He's a Milwaukee guy, right?
I guess, but this was a New York band. It was like Roger C. Real and the Rue Morgue.
Oh.
And they did a 7-inch, maybe even an LP.
He didn't have the hair though. Different.
He does. Yeah. Like I've only, to be fair, I've only seen like a little, very artistically kind of laid out back sleeve photograph of him, but you can kind of tell there's some length to that hair going on.
All right.
Like there's some long bang kind of things hanging down a little bit in the front and then it's pulled back. He's if I ever met him, that'd be all I want to talk to him about is his punk band.
Yeah.
No SNL questions for me.
No, that's unlikely.
No, definitely. I guess he's dropped off kind of the face of the earth now and is harder to find, but it is certainly a lost thing. But yeah, anyway, this has been incredible, Jason. And I could talk to you forever. And anytime you want to come back, I will punish you some more.
Thank you for I love the Punisher.
Well, I
love talking to the Punisher. There's a wrestler called the Punisher, right?
Pardon me?
There's a wrestler called the Punisher, right? Or is it a cartoon? It's a superhero.
It's a comic book. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're confusing your fantasies now.
Sorry. I got wrapped up in the Kiss thing.
Yeah, I'm going to tell Bob. Bob's going to be pissed. He's like, what? What?
I'm out. I'm no longer in the band.
Yeah. I think if I were, I think that's the thing. If I were in the band, I would just throw off that balance. You need someone that's not into wrestling, because as soon as you have another person into wrestling, it would just throw everything too weird. So that's probably
John and I are curious. We'll ask him questions about it, but he knows he can't go too deep, because we'll start gazing off.
He is the one. So like his period of wrestling is so beloved and so documented.
Yeah.
But he's the one great shoot interview that's never happened. Like he's the one guy who's never like talked shit on everyone else he worked with, basically.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's being goaded by Eric Bischoff, who was a on-screen wrestling / behind-the-scenes executive for WCW. He talks a lot of smack about Bob, and I want Bob to just take the gloves off. Yeah, I
Bob knows that.
I keep telling Bob, I'm like, he's throwing shade. I think he wants a promo battle, and I want to give you the forum to do it.
That'll be your most popular podcast of all time.
Oh, it pisses me off when I hear Eric Bischoff like, yeah, he's in some alternative band. They weren't any good. I'm like, Husker Du, what the fuck, motherfucker? He's not one band. Oh, it makes me so angry. Wow. I want Bob to go off. I'm like, come on, Bob, please, deathmatch style, go after Bischoff.
Take the bait.
Take it. Well, anytime you want to take the bait again, Jason, to come back here, please know the door is always open.
It's great to see you, buddy. When are you going to be on the road? When can we run into each other again?
Thank you, Jason, for coming on the show. And you heard right there, Jason will be back for future episodes. And also, he'll be seeing me on the road. And hopefully you'll be seeing him on the road. Hopefully we'll be seeing each other on the road safely at some point in the near future. Because, cannot wait. He talked about those goosebumps that you get from the camaraderie. I definitely get it just being at shows. Being at a show, again, felt so good a couple weeks ago. Anyway, I mentioned off the top, it's a little late, so I'm a little tired. So I'm gonna move on to what's coming up later on this week on the show. Later on this week on the show, this is a wild one. From the movie Silence of the Lambs, from the TV series Grey's Anatomy, from the TV series Weeds. She's been in dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of amazing things over the years. Brooke Smith is here on the show, and believe me, this is just some of you may know this. I was not prepared for Brooke's punk rock resume, and you're in for a treat. This is a fun one. This is coming out later on this week on the show, and I'm stoked for you to hear it. I'm very, very excited. Thank you to my buddy John Ross Bowie for the hookup with this one too. He's the one that brought this episode together. So anyway, I'm not going to overhype it. You're going to hear it in a couple days anyway. Remember, as always, Black Lives Matter. The lives of Indigenous peoples matter. We need to protect trans kids. We need to help trans people protect themselves. We need to stop hate and violence towards Asian people and people of different faiths, and just all this Nazi shit's got to be like knocked off, just forgotten about. Because this shit isn't political. These aren't political issues that we're talking about here. These are just basic human rights issues. Just people trying to be free and live their lives. So, smash Nazis, smash fascism, like just get rid of all that bullshit. And then we can talk about politics, bike lanes and all that kind of stuff. That's more politics. This isn't politics. Go out and do something creative for yourself. You start a band, you start a fanzine, build your own culture. Anyone can do it, but it doesn't have to be that big. You may just draw a picture for yourself. Just write a story. Just get some of your thoughts down. It can help. It can help with mental health stuff. As well as enriching the world, but it can definitely help with your own personal mental health stuff. Speaking of helping with mental health stuff, try meditating. It works for some people. I didn't believe in it. I find it works for me when I remember to do it. I need to remember to do it more often. But try it. Maybe it'll work for you. Sign your organ donor cards, because you don't need that shit when they come for it. You don't need it at all. Not at all. Not one bit. Get your shot. Stay safe. Wear a mask, just do all the things we were supposed to be doing, and we'll get through this thing. I believe it. I really believe it. You got to hold on to hope, right? Hold on to hope. That's it. I will see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.